Should be good now. I'm just refreshing the channel. There we go. Anyway, if you were on about something, Evan, go ahead.
I really wasn't. I was just waiting for you guys to get back. If you can get an extra gun for somebody, or a backup for yourself, that's not a bad idea. Which was something Tom was talking about. But obviously, you don't want to do that at the expense of good safety equipment and sort of comfort things like good footwear. Which are going to be much more useful in the long term. What we were talking about before, too, was just making sure that you're not immediately blowing your entire monetary wad on a gun that you think you might want, but you really don't have any idea about yet because you haven't really played enough.
Right.
And I think that's a very important point. For new players is you got to play some before you really understand what you want to do. And you're not going to know that until you just get out there. And I think a lot of guys, they're taking a video game mindset to it and going, oh yeah, well, I want to do this because this is what I like to do in Call of Duty or Battlefield or whatever. And, what's the right word? The analogy or the comparison there really is not the same. So, just because you really like sniping in a video game doesn't mean you're going to like it as a airsofting tactic.
Right. I was just about to say a medic in something like that is a very different animal too.
Oh, yeah. And honestly, I think an airsoft medic is probably more fun than
100%. Yeah.
Being a medic in a video game, unless you're doing something super realistic. How this all ties into tactics, you got to know what kind of game you want to play before you can get a gun that's going to match that. So if you really like running and gunning, you find out a sniper rifle is not going to let you do that. If you really like being sneaky and silent and high speed, low drag and all of that, light machine gun is probably not going to be a good option for you.
I was just about to ask if you wanted if you want a more low speed, high drag, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, you're going to get some guys out there who are very, very physically fit who can kind of do that. Maybe they could still be high speed, low drag and carry something like that, but your average player is probably not going to be to that level. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, Evan, I was just laughing because, you have the physically fit players. I was just thinking of certain ones like an old friend of the field, regular at the field, who didn't give a shit and just brought his 2-wheel cart with his 3 coolers all the way to his hard spawn. Which is, I respect that more than almost anything.
Oh yeah, man. He knew his limits.
Yeah.
So
played with him.
I think that's important from a gameplay aspect too. But
yeah.
All this really is sort of just precursor or prologue to actual tactics. The type of player that you want to be and the type of weapon that you have is going to dictate the type of tactics that you're going to need to use.
100%.
Those two certainly feed off of each other, and you're going to be more or less successful with particular tactics if you have a particular type of gun. And that sounds obvious, but I think a lot of guys just kind of get caught up in the whole, oh man, I'm buying this gun and it's going to look really cool and it's going to be awesome. And they forget, oh yeah, at some point I'm actually going to have to carry this thing around and use it effectively to have a good time.
Or God forbid, take it apart with this being a teching show. I mean, there's a lot of other fun, weird guns. As soon as you stray outside of, M4 or AK territory, God, are some of these things dumpster fires inside. I mean, even just I'm obviously in the long list of proponents of reasonable players who don't rip open things like the gearbox if they don't have to. But I mean, if you want to give the barrel a good cleaning on an MP5.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely guns out there too that just have weird idiosyncrasies that.
So yeah, I guess what that was getting at within in a distantly orbiting way was that and I've been telling guys for years in terms of what kind of guns to be looking at right out the gate. Nothing bad really comes of doing, doing a deep dive or two and just figuring out with if at least if you like something else about the gun, making sure it's easy to work on. Because again, I'm even $140 gun, that's in this economy, trademark copyright, is a couple of bucks. I mean, if you're not gonna I would think most people aren't gonna throw it out if the hop up acts up or something else.
Yeah, and I mean,
So just
it's
be
always
ready
good
to
to it's
you
always
don't
good to
wanna
do
create
your
problems
due
for yourself.
diligence in terms of reviews, reading
Yeah,
reviews of, you may say, "Oh yeah, this gun looks really cool," and then you start reading reviews on it, and it's fucking dog shit. I had that happen multiple times where I was getting ready to buy a gun, and then I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is this gun is awful," and I'm not, I gotta find something else that I want now.
100%.
And then there's certain guns like the TM Uzi, which I knew were going to be garbage, and I didn't care because it was cool. But the difference there is that I went into the purchase knowing that. So all of that aside, getting back to what I was saying at the very beginning, it almost behooves you to get a lower end gun before you really decide to plunk down the bulk of your money um, on something that you really want. But I made this claim that getting a lower end gun is going to make you a better player in the long term. And the point of that is, especially now, with some of the very decent low end guns, is you can even try out a couple different styles of tactics with a low end gun.